Hey, welcome to another episode of the Rock Fantasy Files. I've got another laptop. I got a new microphone so that hopefully everyone can hear me this week. And I've gathered together. I stole a bunch of people from Pete Pardo's channel, The Sea of Tranquility. And thank you very much, Pete. And I'm even wearing a t-shirt and he couldn't make it last minute tonight. And we're going to talk on this episode. We're going to do another of our roundtable discussions on albums celebrating milestone anniversaries. Tonight, we're featuring Jethro Tull's Aqualung. It's celebrating its 50th anniversary. The album was released on March 19th, 1971. It's actually the fourth studio album by the band. The band's best-selling album, selling more than 7 million albums worldwide. It peaked at number 7 on the Billboard U.S. charts. The album was one of the first to be recorded at the newly opened studios of Island Records in Bash Street, London. Led Zeppelin were also in the same building recording their Untitled fourth album at the same time. That was an interesting fact, I thought. And I have asked my panelists to chat about their favorite tracks on the album and give it a rating between 1 and 10. So I guess we can kick things off and I'll give my picks at the very end. And welcome everyone to the show. Thank you for giving your time and watching tonight. And please take a moment to hit subscribe and like and mention your favorite Jethro Tull Aqualung moments to our viewers. Let's kick it off with the fellow that got here first, and he's over on my left all the way from, well, it's not sunny because it's nighttime, but California. We got Rand Kelly. Welcome.
Hello, thank you.
Hey,
Appreciate you having me on, Steve.
Anytime.
Here's the prop.
There's the
I
prop.
got the Steven Wilson box set thing. I don't even want to tell you how much I paid for it. It's embarrassing.
I know.
They're really expensive. Yeah, this album really just blew my mind. You know, I was just learning how to play guitar, and I went into the guitar store, and this guy goes, "Ben," I said, teach me that. I need to learn that." So he taught me that and everything. Yeah, they were getting played on the air in those days, you know, in Las Vegas. I was in the Air Force, and the Aqualung was getting played, and then I bought the album like the next day or so and just fell in love with it. Every song was just magnificent. It was my first Jethro Tull album ever, and it's so good. And I finally got to see them. They came around in Las Vegas in 1972 for the Thick as a Brick tour, and they played a big chunk of Aqualung, and the Eagles opened for them, if you can imagine that concert.
Wow.
Kind of weird.
That's
Eagles
cool.
had just put out that first album called Eagles, you know.
Mhm.
It was good stuff, but Tull just was, they were smoked. They were so good. When Martin Barr was like God to me, I was like, oh, I want to play like that. I want to learn that stuff, you know. And I finally got to a point where I can do a lot of it. Anyways, I don't really know what else to say about it. It's just a great album. Ian Anderson, the lead singer, you know, flute player, constantly says it's not a concept album and there's no connecting thematic thing. But Aqualung and Cross-Eyed Mary are connected just because he uses the word Aqualung and Cross-Eyed Mary, I think. But it seems like there's a whole thing on side 2 that's all about God.
Mm-hmm.
You know, my God, and Hymn 43 and
Sure.
Wind Up. And Locomotive Breath doesn't really fit in that part. It just like it kind of skips, you know, hops over it. But there's a thematic thing. It's questioning Christian or religion in general, I think. And man, I love this album. I just so love it. So if I was going to give my favorite 3 of these ones,
yeah,
better get to it, huh? Number 3 will be Wind Up.
Nice.
Number 2 will be My God, and number 1 has to be Aqualung. And
Okay.
if I could pull a Pardo, I would say Cross-Eyed Mary is tied with 3, because
That's fine.
that's such a great freaking song. And Iron Maiden's version of it is phenomenal.
Yes.
Because Bruce
Oh, it is.
Dickinson sings it an octave higher than Ian. Which
Yes,
is
he does.
crazy. They nail it. They just nailed it. And yeah, and that's all I can say about Aqualung.
Okay. Cool.
Well, speaking
Your
of that
rating?
religious theme, the religious theme, doesn't the back of the album have like almost looks like a biblical writing on it, like on the eighth day or in the beginning type of yeah. Yes, I remember. Yeah.
Yeah, it looks kind of like a Bible,
Yeah.
Joey.
Yes. Yeah.
It was a loose concept album because even when they get the vinyl days, they had the side one named Aqualung and side two My God, and it was reference to
Right,
those that theme. So they weren't gonna make it like an epic like Yes do, where they have one title and all these songs within, but they thought that it suited that the whatever they were brainstorming at the time. But because it wasn't a concrete thing, I don't think he wanted to be really a concept, because we know what he does the album next after that. That was a concept album,
Great.
and
Yeah.
they went all the way when you put out Thick as a Brick, right? As
Great.
one song. So I think that's why I think he downplays it, but it definitely like, almost like, when you have the Beatles collection, it's like the Revolver setting up for Stars and Pepper. You know what I mean? It's like they had to be thinking this kind of way to be adventurous to come up with Thick as a Brick after that.
Yeah, and a Passion Play is even more progressive and more
Even more so.
conceptual.
Agreed.
And a Passion Play is my favorite Jethro Tull album. Just throwing it out there.
Okay.
Okay.
Rick, I guess we can kick the ball right over to you right now.
Sure. Aqualung for Jethro Tull, I didn't even know that was the name of a band. I thought it was the name of a person. When I was a kid, I joined the Columbia House Records. You buy your first order, and I saw Jethro Tull enough that I thought I was just taking a gamble. Had a pretty cool cover. I thought it was pretty, mythical. But meanwhile, it was just a picture of a homeless person, which I actually thought it was Ian at the time, because you don't really see the information, and you're so small. When you look at an ad in a magazine, you didn't know exactly what you were getting, but it was a chance. But I liked the album right off the first listen as a young guy with about maybe 13, 14 maybe. And I liked the balance between the acoustic and an electric song, which was a lot as you start knowing a little bit. Because my favorite album, when I got this, I went backwards. I didn't go Thick as a Brick yet. I went backwards. I went to get Benefits and anything before that. And Benefit was my favorite album for the longest time. I think Thick as a Brick beats it because of the magnitude of that song for me. But as an album, I was listening to a bunch of different songs. Benefit was this. But I like Jethro Tull Aqualung because just like millions of people, as your introduction, Steve, this was most people's first gateway to Jethro Tull because of that, Aqualung and Cross-Eyed Mary and whatever they played on the radio. And so I like the whole thing. I think it runs through really quick for me, because even those acoustic numbers about a minute and a half, just as when you think it ran its course, they're moving on. So they did this album, as far as a tracking order, pretty interesting for the listener. And it almost felt like a theater, because you open up with Aqualung and you end up with Wind Up the way they did it was a good closer. So without further ado, I'll talk about what's my favorite. I would go with the number 3 would be Cross-Eyed Mary. I like that a lot, and it was like the song I would prefer because it wasn't overly played on the radio. But that one has a high special part in my heart for that song. And I would go number 2 would be Locomotive Breath. I love their piano intro, and then they build up, and it becomes such an epic tune. And really sonically, for the way they recorded in that time, 1971 is a well-recorded album. Especially for balancing the acoustic and electric. If you know the balance of the two, that was pretty cool, because the acoustic was just as loud in your face is the electric guitar in the mix, in a way that you didn't see it, a tremendous dynamic drop. And of course, I'll go Aqualung being the one that kind of threw the line in there and wheeled me in, that would be number one, because even when I see them, I'm expecting them to play it. And it's not only because that's what everybody else want to hear in there, but it's a special song, you know. To me, it's like, it is the anthem for a song that if you wanted to sum up the word of a whole band, what is Jethro Tull? That one song kind of sums it up quite a bit. The dynamic and all the changes and the clever lyrics and the very act that Ian is sort of acting vocally. You know, he's playing a role and telling the narration or whatever. So I think it's a really well done song to give anybody. You want to know what Jethro Tull is about? It's just that one song kind of explains it, even though they do that throughout many albums. So that would be mine. And for a rating, it's kind of hard to rate an album that you have grown up with when you got to appreciate their later work and know that they even mature more as a writer. But at that time, when I've heard this song, this album was like a number 10 to me. But I would say that knowing what they would come up to do after, and that's my favorite stuff. So I'm going to say give it solid 8, solid 9, maybe 8.5, right in the middle, because I really like what comes after this. And to me, this is like they leapfrog big time with Thick as a Brick and the albums after that. But don't get me wrong, this is a reason why it's a classic that it is. It was a great, for anybody who have never had it, any idea what Jethro Tull was about to be, this was a great way to be introduced. So that would be my rating. Thank you for letting me vent.
And one mention about what Ian Anderson, I'll get to you a second there, Rand. One mention of, I listened to an interview with Ian earlier today, and he was talking about how recording in that new studio at that time, it was like what used to be a church, and he said they really couldn't hear anything they were doing, and he was not pleased with the album for a long time. And another point that you made about going in and not knowing, you thinking Jethro Tull, that was a joke. I mean, for me owning a record store for 30 some years, people would come in and go, Jethro Tull, yeah, he's pretty good. They actually thought that Ian Anderson was Jethro Tull. Like they would think that Jethro Tull was the dude. I guess Leonard Skinner used to get that sometimes too. We're like,
That's
yeah,
right.
Leonard
With the
Skinner, he's
name,
pretty good, but yeah.
Yeah, or Alice Cooper, she's great. They have no idea.
I guess, but Jethro Tull, I don't know, that's the one I've heard the most. Like, yeah, he's a pretty good singer. He's pretty good.
And I think if it wasn't for the Beverly Hillbillies and you had a character named Jethro, we wouldn't have thought that might be a boy's name. Who knows? But I think that influenced the
Jethro,
my generation anyway.
Those are two way different Jethros too.
Yeah, I know, but I'm just saying it's just the fact that it's a character, and when you see the band, you never saw a picture of the band on the album. It was just this one dude, this Aqualung or whatever, this homeless person. So you almost thought it was just this one individual,
Yeah.
Right.
So Rand, you had your hand up, Rand.
Yes, sir. Yeah, thank you. Appreciate it. I forgot to rate the record.
I think you did. I was just thinking that.
Yeah, I'll give it
an 8, I believe.
I'll give it a 9.
All right.
Okay.
Cool. All right. So we're gonna move to someone that's never been on the Rock Fantasy Files. Actually, there's 2 of them tonight, and we're gonna go with Jack first. Jack Collandano, I believe I'm pronouncing it correctly.
Collandano, yep.
Good friend of Pete Pardo's, and Pete set him up. He's like, he'd love to do the episode, so here he is, and great to see you.
Oh, thank you for having me, Steve. I appreciate it. And so I've been on with Rick, and Spaghetti Lee gave me a great shout out in the holiday episode last week. So thank you so much for that. And Rand, I believe I know you from Facebook. I think so, right? Maybe not.
Yeah, I've commented on there.
Dennis, nice to meet you.
We've been on that tribute show before where we get all the people.
Yeah.
Okay, so anyway, Aqualung. So my story with Aqualung. So when I first started getting into rock in probably the late 70s, I was like 13 years old, and I was probably one of the last Kiss fans in my middle school, and I was much maligned for that, and it really sucked. And you had all these people walking around thinking that they were these great Led Zeppelin fans because they hummed the words, the what is it, the harmony of Black Dog. Meanwhile, they couldn't name 3 Zeppelin songs, if I paid them $1,000. Same thing with Jethro Tull. They think they're these great fans because they can hum a few bars of Aqualung. Whereas at least I did it right. I became a fan of Jethro Tull on my own terms. I decided to give them a try. I bought MU, The Best of Jethro Tull, and fell in love with them. And this was around the time they released Songs from the Woods. So then I bought that. That was great. So Aqualung was actually my 3rd album that I purchased. And you know what? They have a lot of radio hits from that album, but why I love it so much is because I love the more obscure stuff on the album. Like, unfortunately, these are not going to make my rating, but I love the acoustic stuff they do. That, Cheap Day Return, into Mother Goose, into Wondering Aloud. Excellent.
Right on. I agree.
But my 3 favorites are, again, my 3 favorites are not songs that they play on the radio regularly. Like, so my number 3 is Wind Up. Love it. Love that soft piano ballad into the heavy section in the middle. Hymn 43. I mean, you gotta love that. It's just barn burner, start to finish.
Yeah.
And a point I could make, Jack, not to interrupt you, but Hymn 43 was actually the single from the album when it came out.
That's right.
But it did get some FM airplay, but you can't deny how great it is. Yeah.
Oh yeah, I'm just saying, and now you wouldn't even think that, because the 3 songs we hear from this are, Locomotive Breath and Cross-Eyed Mary and Aqualung on the radio.
Right. Yeah.
Hymn 43 was actually in the Billboard 100, like top 40 or top 40.
Wow.
It's a lot of airplay down here.
Yep.
Do you guys think that they like strategically didn't title Hymn 43 Jesus Save Me? Like, I still know that song in my head as Jesus Save Me. I wonder if it was maybe at the time being controversial. I mean,
I know Ian said that he didn't really want to make an outward religious statement. So that part of it. Yeah. Another little fun fact I can tell you is that supposedly the Aqualung concept came from his wife, Jenny, at the time. She was a photographer and she took pictures of homeless down by the river. And Ian saw this character. It's like, wow, now there's a concept for an album. So he actually gave her partial writing credit for the song Aqualung, surprisingly enough.
Wow, that's a cool little factoid.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
I mean, he didn't even give Martin Baer a lot of song credit. But anyway, so my number 1, and I love this song, and I am so thankful that when I saw them on the Rock Island tour in the late 80s, they played it. My God.
Nice.
Excellent.
Some of the best flute he's ever played.
Yes.
And that's that solo that he always plays, regardless whether they play My God or not. So.
And Jack, when the band comes in on My God, it starts out nice and soft with the acoustic guitar.
Oh yeah.
I listened to it like twice today, and I said, "My God, that sounds like Black Sabbath."
But that sinister acoustic sound in the beginning, you gotta love it.
Oh yeah, that's the King.
Did they do that live there, Jack? Did they play it like that live when you saw him?
Oh yeah. Well, he was actually sitting down on a stool. He had just segued from another acoustic number, and he still had his acoustic on, and he started that way, and then the band came in. After like the 2-minute mark, I guess. Nice. So that was very cool. So yeah, so that's my number 1. I'm going to give it a 9 out of 10. The only thing that prevents me from giving it higher than a 9 is that there are a couple of Tull albums that I like even more.
Okay.
That's how I rated it too.
That's what I was thinking too.
Yeah.
You got to give yourself headroom.
Yeah. Got to measure it against thick as a brick.
Break mind, think alike.
And passion play.
Stand Up is my favorite. So just throwing that out there.
Oh, nice.
Great album. Great album.
I kind of forget about that one sometimes.
Okay, so I'm done. Next
All right,
person.
well, that was really cool. And
Thanks.
hey, Denny, there's one person that's a regular on our channel that wanted nothing to do with this episode. And I want you to guess which person that is.
John.
No, John wanted to do it, but he had something else. Robin's still mad at Jethro
Oh.
Tull because they got the Grammy for best metal instead of Miss.
Oh, well,
Oh,
get
he's still
over it.
mad.
Come on, Robin. Come on.
He's still mad.
She's not gonna watch it, so she's not gonna see it. So
I mean, come
No,
on.
what happened? Was that Farm on the Freeway or Crest of a
No,
Knave?
Crest.
It
Yeah,
was
Crest of a
Knave.
Knife.
It was
Yeah,
Crest of a Knave, yeah.
how
yeah.
clueless the Grammys
Oh,
are.
come on.
Well,
Jethro Tull is heavy metal.
What,
well, they
you
gotta
guys
mix.
sold what, 400 million records and they're upset? I mean, come on, get
I
over it.
was jumping up and down. I thought it was great.
I remember that. But I think they got it mixed up just for the fact that this progressive rock, they must have think it's aggressive rock and think it's heavy
Yeah,
metal or
yeah,
something.
well,
Yeah.
Because
talking about
it
the
totally didn't fit the bill. I mean, I'm sure they look, even them looking at each other, they would look a little awkward receiving an award that they didn't expect to be under that
Right.
title.
I haven't watched the Grammy Awards since the
Yeah.
70s. So sorry.
Well, Dream
Fuck
Theater's
the Grammys.
Dream
Fuck
Theater's
the
been
Grammys.
nominated this year, so you should.
I won't watch it because of that. Sorry.
Oh.
I haven't watched it since Jethro Tull won Best Metal Record. That was
I got my
last-
hockey
I think
smile.
that
see?
was it for me too.
Well, if Dream Theater wins, I'll tell you about it.
All right, let me know. All right, hey, we're gonna rock it down to Denny. Your turn.
All right, Jack, Ren, and Rick already stole a lot of what I wanted to say. But I'll
Great
tell
minds
you-
think alike.
I always have a story with these bands. I always involve girls and like bad things I was doing. But I think like so back in the 70s, like the way that music would get to us was totally different. It was always like through either word of mouth of like, cousins, older brothers and things like that. So I already knew of Jethro Tull because my cousin kept playing the album stand up like nonstop. So like A New Day Yesterday and like Nothing Is Easy. Like I knew these songs. Like I've been listening to these songs since I'm like 6, 7 years old, right? So I went to this party like in Quebec, in Montreal. We celebrate June 24th as like Saint Jean Baptiste. And back in late 70s, you always had bands performing like cover songs and things like that. There would be like 2,000-3,000 people in attendance, but people would play covers of like classic rock band that sometimes you never had a chance to know who they were, right? So this band played like Aqualung, and I was like, holy shit, this is a great song. And the rendition that they did was like amazing. So trying to avoid like distracting me, trying to impress girls, so I went to talk to the band guys and be like, hey, what's this song? Like, and they said, oh, it's Jethro Tull. It's from the album Aqualung. And I was like, holy shit, I know Jethro Tull. And I, never heard that song. So of course, the day after, go straight to the record store, buy Aqualung. And, it was like maybe 78, 79 by that point. And I was already into Jethro Tull, but like listening to the album sold me more into it. And as like I got more, Minstrel of the Gallery and Thick as a Brick, some of my favorite albums ever. But the thing I wanted to mention is my cousin always told me like Tony Iommi went and auditioned and played with Jethro Tull for a while. So like, but I at that point, I was like, I was not hearing it. I'm like, okay, I'm listening to Nothing Is Easy and Fat Man and these songs, and it doesn't sound like Sabbath to me. But when I bought Aqualung, I was like, okay, there's like a darkness to this freaking music. Like some of the songs are like actually like using some chord progression that could be considered like pretty evil, right? So, and then I got into it, and over the years, like I have a love-hate relationship with Aqualung because it's always the song people mention when they mention Jethro Tull, so that or the album, so like you go and you like it, and then you don't, and then you go, no, I'll go listen to Thick as a Brick, or and even like Benefit is one of my favorite Jethro
Oh,
Tull album
yeah.
of all time as well.
My favorite.
So so you got this relationship with the band, and the other thing I wanted to mention is the acoustic stuff on the album is what really gets to me, because you know, I listened to all the heavy stuff, of course, up front, but like later, as I got to appreciate the musicality and the acoustic stuff, some of these songs really got to me. And it is like, you know, no matter how you look at it, it is an amazing album. Like from top to bottom, there's so much content to go and digest and appreciate. That, like, from a rating perspective, I would give it a 9.5, almost a 10, just because, same as you guys, there's some other Jethro Tull album that I love even more, but this album is definitely great. Like, no question asked. It's a freaking solid album. Top 3 songs. Number 3, I'll go with Up to Me. I think it's an amazing song. It's like, boom, 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 no, no, no. It represents to me what like Jethro Tull in its essence is. It's so well written. I'm gonna go with Locomotive Breath 2, because I'm a extreme metal guy, and somehow I find the vocal delivery of that song super heavy.
That's
awesome.
heavy.
The way that he sings it, freaking
Yeah.
in your face. And I saw them play it live. I don't know what tour it was. Like, I apologize. I used to party a lot when I was younger, but I know that they used to, it was on a boat. Like the stage was a boat. So I'm thinking it might be 81, 82. But that's all I can remember about it. So Locomotive Breath, number 2. And number 1, I think same as Jack, it's My God. It is a very spooky, eerie, fucking evil song. That's all I can say about it. So yeah, Jethro Tull rules, and I wish a lot more people would go and start digging into their discography and go into some of these albums. There's some heavy stuff in there.
Honestly, I don't think you can go wrong with anything they did in the 70s.
Yep.
There you go. I agree, Jack. I agree. Yeah.
There's a video floating around YouTube of a performance, not from Aqualung, but for the song "The Mouse Police That Never Sleeps," and it's just such a cool video. And it's sitting, and it's like they filmed it on like a European, like American bandstand style thing, because the crowd is completely sterile and dead. They're just sitting there, and these young girls are sitting right in front of the stage, and they look terrified of Ian Anderson up there with the flute and his expressions. And my wife watches it, and he looks like he's insane.
Yeah, he's a bizarre looking dude.
And
The eyes,
I thought that was all, yeah, those eyes.
I was gonna go there. I
And
definitely gotta go
that
there.
song gets so heavy at the end, and those kids were just like scrunching up, like. But anyhow.
Always reminded me of the professor in Back to the Future a little bit, like in it is the way that he's like moving and stuff like that.
Great.
Oh, Christopher Lloyd, yeah.
Yeah. All right.
Denny, have you seen that video that Tony Iommi plays with Jethro Tull? It's out there on YouTube.
I've seen it. Yes, it's
Playing
just,
slide guitar on a Fender
Yeah,
Stratocaster.
Wasn't that the Rolling Stones circus?
Yeah,
That
the
was-
Rolling Stones
Rolling
circus.
Stone
Yeah.
Circus, yes.
I don't know how I feel about it, but like,
Weird.
I do, like, I would have loved to hear what music they would have come up with if
Right.
like Ian
Talk about
Anderson
heavy.
like paired up with like Tony Iommi. It would have been evil as shit.
Right.
Like,
Yeah, right.
Yeah,
Well,
right.
that's why I think My God sounds like Black Sabbath. Maybe he was doing a little tribute to the guy.
could
Yeah,
be.
you got a
man,
point
but
there.
Yeah, that riff is definitely.
That note is killer.
All righty. So, Danny, thanks for your input, and we're gonna move over to another guy, first time ever on the Rock Fantasy Files, right here from the Hudson Valley in downtown sunny Port Jervis, New York. Joey Spaghetti Lee is here, bringing the rap.
Hey,
Love your
Hey.
Zappa picture.
Oh, thank you. That's a painting. A friend of mine painted that
Oh,
for me.
nice.
Nice.
Really nice surprise, pleasant surprise. I didn't ask him. I didn't like commission it to be painted. He just one day walked up the driveway with it, and I said, "What's that?" And he turned it around, and I was just, "Whoa,
Neat.
great, really cool,
Awesome.
super cool." One day I'll tell you the story about it. It's like it's really cool how that came about. But there's a lot with this Jethro Tull. A lot has been said. A lot of really, really good points have been said. But one thing I wanted to riff on, with people mistaking Jethro Tull for an individual as opposed to a band, I did know that Jethro Tull was a historic figure, that there was a man in history named Jethro Tull, but I wasn't quite sure what he did. And full disclosure, I Googled it while we were talking. So it turns out historically, Jethro Tull lived in from 1674 to 1741, and he invented a machine that helps to sow seeds in a row from a horse-drawn carriage. So I
Yeah.
guess when you drive by a farm and you see all the crops in a nice neat row, I guess the original Jethro Tull invented that. Just a little historical
Yell
footnote
Jethro Tull
here,
out
here,
the window.
here on the here at the Rock Fantasy history lesson. So
And the
Yes,
farmer wouldn't
thank
know what
you.
you're talking about.
I wish I had that. Like I knew it before, but thank God we live in the information age. I cheated. I Googled it.
That's
I
good.
Googled it.
so good.
Glad you did some research there.
Yeah, well, because so many good things have been said about this record. My personal history with this album is a little strange because I honestly, I grew up having it. I don't remember buying it, and I don't believe I inherited it from my parents because I didn't think that they were into the Jethro Tull thing. It's like somebody probably left it at my house, or I just bought it with a bunch of other records, but I had it forever. It's a classic. It's a must-have. It's in our DNA. This era of rock and roll. I mean, I was raised on it. So this album is, I mean, it's awesome. Okay. And the recording, Rick brought up the sound of this album is really cool. I didn't know somebody had mentioned that some of it was recorded in a church. That makes sense to me because some of the acoustics. But one thing that always struck me about Ian Anderson's flute playing. Now, there's not a lot of flute accompaniment in rock and roll. Not a lot. Some, especially back in the early 70s. Zappa has a lot of it. He has had horn players and of all
Marshall
kinds.
Marshall
But
Tucker band.
right, yeah,
Focus.
that era. But one thing, when you listen to Ian Anderson play, you could literally hear him blowing in it to where it almost sounds like he's almost a percussion instrument. Like you hear the literal do 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 do. It's kind of cool. It's unique, and it kind of adds to the craziness of the whole visual of Ian Anderson, man, with the tights and the crazy mad scientist hair, and he just a very visual, unique guy to watch.
Standing
With
on one
this,
leg all the time.
yeah, always with the weird poses, and the fact that they rarely, if ever, put themselves on the front cover of their albums. It was a mystery added to the mystique, and the guy was just very, very weird. Unusual, but super, super cool. His percussiveness in that flute makes it really, really unique. I'm not the biggest fan of the flute in rock and roll. I'm not, but because I also like sort of swing more towards the heavy side. But the sound of this record is incredible. Some of the acoustics I could clearly hear now, knowing that it was in a church. I'm going to give it a re-listen because it does sound like they recorded it. I thought it sounded like they recorded it in a cellar. There's almost a natural reverb and echo
Actually,
to some of the soft parts.
actually, Led Zeppelin was in the basement of this reform yeah. I'm looking for the word. It was turned into. It was a church that was turned into a studio. So the upper part
Remodeled.
remodel. There we go. Duh. I'm up too long tonight. Sorry. Thanks, man. And
You bet.
yeah. So yeah, that was part of the interview that I listened to with Ian talking about. It was kind of hard because they were in this bigger room. He said it was more for an orchestra or something more than a rock band. And Zeppelin had booked the space before them. They just were the first band to get into this new studio, and they were in a smaller room. And he believed that he did a little bit of the recording in that room too with Zeppelin, where Zeppelin was. So
That would make sense because if you ever listen to the intro, the drum intro, and when the levee breaks, it's almost got that echoey sort of a boom,
Oh,
boom,
yeah.
boom. That's a similar vibe here. Wow, we just
Maybe
connected the
Zeppelin
dots.
snuck
That's
upstairs for a little while.
maybe. Super cool. Anyway, again, I still thought very hard. I don't know how I ever came about owning this record, but I did. I don't anymore, but I did on vinyl, only on vinyl. As far as my favorite tracks on this album, I am normally not one who chooses radio hits. I like to go deep and usually pull out the deep cuts. But on this album, some of these radio hits, the riffage, the heaviness, just the iconic sort of memories that I have around them, they're just heavy. When Jethro Tull gets heavy, they're good. When Jethro Tull goes soft, they're good. So I have to make this choice here. I debated on my third favorite. I was gonna go with him 43, but I opted for Mother Goose, and I just love this, man. It's just a perfect blend. It's got acoustic, it's got a little groove. The flute accompaniment is great. It's not a radio hit. It's buried sort of in there. It may have been on a greatest hits record, I think, but it's really it's killer. It's killer. I love it. This my second favorite would be Locomotive Breath, just because it's Locomotive Breath. It's just badass. It's I just like it. It's killer. What can you say? It's Locomotive Breath. And my favorite, of course, is I gotta go Cross-Eyed Mary. I gotta go with Cross-Eyed
Cool.
Mary. I kind of don't want to say it's because Maiden did it, but Maiden's version is so damn good. But it's still Cross-Eyed Mary as heavy as it gets, man. For Tull, it's so cool. So that would be it. The total album, it's hard to give a all their albums back then were a killer, man. And honestly, my personal favorite is Thick as a Brick. It's just so cool. I'll give it a solid 8. Solid 8.
Cool.
Definitely.
Nothing wrong with that.
Definitely.
Yeah. So thanks. And yeah, as a kid, most of my experience of being exposed to live rock and roll at the time, or metal, or whatever you want to call it, there was a club across town called the Fast Lane, and I would go there as a 16-year-old kid. Drinking age was 18. Then in New York, it was very lax, and I would get in there at 16. We were in there. My friends and I would be in this bar like 4 nights a week, but almost every band, mostly cover bands, were there, but they were great. Your first experience, and they were like really professional, really good, like cover bands, and almost every one of them played Locomotive Breath and Cross-Eyed Mary, along with stuff like Queen, Sheer Heart Attack, and that's this heavy stuff. And at the time, you just started discovering and realizing, oh, you'd hear this band play it, and like, oh shit, man, what's that? And your friend's like, oh, that's all. And then you'd go out and buy the record, or the 8-track, actually. Let's not forget about 8-tracks. If any us guys from the 70s here, I had all this stuff on 8-track. That's Jethro Tull and all that whatnot. And but anyhow, every cover band was playing them at the time. They were so heavy. And I tell you what, those are going to be in my 2 songs. Locomotive Breath. It's heavy. It could be a metal song. It's that heavy, I would say. That could be, that crosses over into a heavy territory. It's such a great song. Cross-Eyed Mary, I'm going to put it number 2. And I'm glad that everyone else picked My God, because as I dug into this album, and I was listening to it again on my hike. I go on a hike almost every day when it's nice out, even if today it was raining. But I put on the Jethro Tull album, and man, this song here, it's just epic. It's got these changes. It has that great flute solo, and I loved it. So My God is in my top 3. I want to mention him 43 too. Of course, we did mention that as a single. Actually, the initial single off this album was him 43 back in 71. But yeah, I'm glad we got to pull this episode together. We've been starting to do these episodes on albums reaching milestones, and we did a couple in the last couple weeks. And hopefully my microphone's working a little bit better, so I don't really sound horribly, because it's been bad the last couple weeks. I don't know what happened, but that little laptop finally just left me. But trying to get this back together because I love doing the show, and I like to thank Rand and Rick and Jack and Denny and Joey for all joining me on this Wednesday evening. And thanks everyone. Does anyone else want to add a little something? We've got a couple minutes, but we're starting to run long on this. We have to get back here and talk about another album.
What was on the B side of that Hymn 43 single?
I don't know. You stumped me. I'm easier to stump than Eddie Trunk too. So easier to stump.
Good question.
I guess it was Cross-Eyed Mirroring.
Cross-eyed Mary, I think it was.
Anybody got a jukebox with it? Then you know. When I
I
was
can
a
look
kid,
it up on the phone.
Could always Google it.
yeah, Google it, Joey. Joe, you're our Google
The
guy.
B-side was Mother Goose.
Oh, really?
Oh,
B-side
okay,
was
okay.
Mother Goose.
That makes
Mother
sense.
Goose. Okay.
There you
I
go.
just looked it up.
And
I
we
looked it up.
always need somebody to pull up some facts. I mean,
Let's
Howard Stern has somebody to do that. Nick does it on Sea of Tranquility on the Valley Spears. Nick is a guy to reach in and pick it up, and Danny's been kind of that on Rock Fantasy.
Yeah. I have a guy on my show too. I call him the control room. Let's go to the control room.
I'm glad we did Jethro Tull during the holiday season because it's kind of Christmas reference.
Yeah. My rule is I don't do any like research. I just go with what I know from what I feel.
Okay.
I don't, and then I enjoy listening to like other participants bringing like facts that like after like 50 years I still don't know, and I a lot of enjoyment hearing like I'm like what, like for I didn't know it was done in a church. I didn't know this. I didn't know that. I'm just going like straight up like 78 style with like zero information and all like with what I'm holding in my hand. So
yeah, it's always great talking to someone like Rand that saw some of these tours. You know, just being a couple years different than not me in age, but I didn't get to see.
yeah, but
any
he
of those
saw you.
tours.
Yes, he saw yes on Black Sabbath. Like,
Oh yeah, and Las Vegas.
You can't compete with that.
Glenn Cornick's Wild Turkey opened up and they were great.
And the Eagles, and I can't wait till the next episode to see who we saw on that tour. But anybody have anything want to add, or should we wrap this one up?
I just want to say that two things. I love Locomotive Breath, even though I didn't choose it in my listing.
Mhm.
I karaoke'd that thing about 3 months ago at the local bar, so
Cool.
it was really fun. I did it for the first time. I went, that was easy because I could actually hit the notes.
Amazing.
Ian Anderson sings in a range where I don't have to struggle.
Nice.
He's got that tenor voice, I guess. And
It's not
also,
dream- yeah,
I
it's
still
not
need
Dream
thousands
Theater.
of subscribers.
It's
One
not like
observation.
Dream Theater.
So you know the song Hotel California, obviously, and
Of
there's
course.
been talk about it having almost the same exact chord progression as We Used to Know by Jethro Tull. And it was asked if they plagiarized it, but the ironic thing is the guy who wrote the music for Hotel California, Don Felder, wasn't even in the band when they toured together. So yeah,
That's true. That's
I
true.
just
When
think
I
it was-
saw him, Bernie Leadon was the singer, and it was just the original group,
right.
Glenn Fry and Don Henley, and they were out there. They opened up with Take It Easy. They were doing Witchy Woman and things like that. Yeah, they basically just played their album and left.
Right.
And then
But, I
Tolkien
mean,
now blew everybody's mind.
So Jack,
only
you've
so
got
many-
you've got a channel. You want to talk about it?
Oh, sure. Well, thank you for that, Steve. So yeah, about a week or two ago, I started my own channel, and I call it All or Nada According to Jack. And I wanted to do it a little different than what Pete does. Of course, again, I don't want to copy everything he did. So
Me either.
and about 20 years ago, I did have my own website that was Seinfeld based, and it was a lot of fun and met a lot of people around the world, just like with these channels that we do. And I one night I'm at my in-laws and I'm bored and I'm watching Seinfeld on Netflix. I'm like, yeah, now there's an idea. Maybe I could resurrect this thing and do something a little bit different. So it's going to be some Seinfeld speak. It's going to be ranking the albums, top tens that I didn't do on Pete's show, and a bunch of other topics. And believe it or not, my wife, who was like very anti rock and roll, gave me a great idea for New Year's Eve. So stay tuned, everybody. Oh, and by the way,
Rock and roll, huh?
she's gonna be pissed off because I found her stash of the Tootsie Rolls.
Tootsie Roll Pops. Top of the
Alrighty.
pops.
Thank you for that,
So,
Steve. I appreciate it.
Thank you guys for being on, and hope to have you guys back on another episode real soon as we move into 2022 and good riddance 2021. I hate to say. I mean, I had a decent time, but it's not the best time of my life. All right. So thank you, everyone, and we'll see
Thanks,
you again
Steven.
soon.
Thanks, Steve.
Peace.
Bye, everybody.
Bye, everybody.
Thank
All
you.
right.
Take care.
All right. Let's see.